all of us agree that AI holds a lot of promise when we talk about the digital transformation of companies. But a lot depends on the use of good data. So there's that whole concept of dirty data or the data that cannot be used, etc. So that's why we call it good data. Now, India's digital push could transform it into a data-rich economy, and AI, as NASSCOM underscores, will play a crucial role in realizing the government's vision to use this data to make India a $5 trillion economy by 2024-25. This panel will discuss how AI, automation, and data analytics can help businesses optimize their performance to drive growth and efficiency. Now, on this panel, we have representations from the B2B commerce space, telecom space, BFSI sectors, coupled with an AI and automation expert. So you can well expect a very insightful discussion on cutting edge technology. But of course, we at Mint, as always, talk about technology in the business context, seeking ROI. So without much ado, let me call the panelists of the day: Amod Malviya, co-founder Udaan.com; Adarsh Nair, CEO of Airtel Digital and Chief Product Officer at Airtel; Deepak Sharma, CDO, Kotak Bank; Suresh San, who's the Head of Innovation at Mahindra Finance, Head of Innovation and Future Technologies at Mahindra Finance; Nitin Purwar, Industry Practice Director, APAC and EMEA regions at UiPath; and Jayant Kola, partner at the deep tech research and advisory firm Convergence Catalyst. So welcome, friends. I think, yes, I think all of us are here. Yes, we have. Yes, Suresh has joined us. I was just missing out on Suresh. So I'm glad we have everybody. I mean, if it's a physical event, you can call a person. Now it becomes a little difficult working out these briefs out here. But folks, thank you very much for making time. I know these are like tough times. We all have to, work out the busy schedules. So really appreciate you people taking out time from your busy schedules and coming over here. And I look forward to a very exciting discussion. Amod, I'd like to, start with you. We have interacted a lot at Flipkart. When you were the CTO out there, I know that you are deeply, embedded as far as AI, ML, data analytics is concerned, and you have brought a lot of those things. I think you call yourself engineer at Udaan, along with being the co-founder also. So I always find that a very interesting kind of stuff. But of course, now you have started focusing a lot on business. So could you just, tell us how exactly at Udaan you're using all these technologies? We are talking about these so-called what people call shiny new tools, but they're not really shiny new tools, because you are showing us that you can easily become a unicorn with one of them. So please, in a couple of minutes or so, I know it's a little unfair to say in a couple of minutes. So just try to tell us as to what you're doing.
Sure. Good to be here, Leslie. Always good to talk to you. So I think at Udaan, from the very beginning, we've thought about data in a very central fashion. I think I'm assuming you're able to hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
All right. So a big reason is that the problem that we set out to solve, which is the B2B commerce problem, is fundamentally a problem of fragmentation all over India. That commerce is fragmented over, just a lot of different players, a lot of very SME orientation, which means that the number of players in the landscape is too many, and the practices and everything is just, nothing is standardized per se. When you're operating in such a market, by definition, you need to approach in a very data-first fashion, and pretty much every tool and technology that you can use in order to make sense of all of that, in order to produce genuine, great insights that allow these businesses to conduct their business with the same efficiency of a centralized, large B2C player. You can't do that without investments in these technologies. So I'm hoping we'll get a lot more to talk about, but the landscape from the way people find products the way people do their transactions, the way we do our supply chain management around all of that. Everything requires data and intelligence. So, good forum for us to be talking about it.
So can you give us quickly a couple of examples that will, give us an idea of how you are actually using it? Because I know that you use it across the fulfillment centers. You have actually energized a lot of the SMEs over the period with all the technologies.
Right. So let me give a bit more what can be referred to as a conventional example and a bit unconventional. Conventional would be, as an e-commerce player, obviously we put in a lot of database intelligence in product discovery. So, as you can imagine, every retailer has their own notion of what's relevant for them. What is the quality to price ratio that actually works for them. It's different for different players. So the way they get to find products amongst millions of products is something that we use data and intelligence to really narrow it down and profile it, personalize it for them. That's a bit more in e-commerce landscape. That's almost a necessity, which is why I'm calling it conventional, but by no means trivial. The other example would be in supply chain. The way our last mile routing is done, the way our, so you have these field executives who go on a field run. The way that run is scheduled, in what order you need to go, in what order you need to pack your vehicle so that the efficiency can be maximized. You can have the maximum number of drop points per run. That's another area which we have actually both invested in and reaped good rewards from that investment.
Okay, I think Adarsh was finding it a little difficult to hear me. Adarsh, can you hear me?
It's still breaking a bit, Leslie. Not sure why.
Okay, I'm not sure why. So I'm just trying to figure that out. Hopefully, the backend team is hearing me and trying to rectify that as we speak. But Adarsh, coming to you, Amol, thanks. I like the insights, and basically, as you were talking about the discovery of products, personalization, and across the supply chain stuff. Now, if we move to the telecom sector, if you look at Adarsh, I think Airtel has a very large team of data scientists. And of course, you use AI/ML for deploying networks in the remotest parts of the country. You use it to transform the customer experience. But let's hear it from you, rather. In a couple of minutes, if you could just give our audience a clear idea of, how imperative is AI automation, data analytics for a telco.
Leslie, I think the question you asked is how important is AI and ML for Airtel, and what are some of the areas we invest? If that's right, I'm going to pick up that question.
Yeah. Yes.
I didn't quite hear your entire talk track. Is that okay? Is that the question?
Yes.
Yeah. Perfect. So, the story at Airtel is about 4 years ago, we started investing in a core DMP, a data management platform inside Airtel, with the vision that we imagined a future where a lot of our processes, whether it be customer experience or acquisition or deploying networks, they would all be influenced by that data set. And truth be told, if you look at Airtel today, very quietly, many parts of Airtel is deeply invested in data and data products. So I'll give you a few examples that spans the whole company so you get a sense of how critical data is for today and the future of Airtel. One example is the one that you talked about, network. As you can imagine, India is a country where the ARPU for a telecom subscriber is one of the lowest. Yet we have 1 billion people. So this is a true problem where technology needs to come in to solve. And take the example of deploying your network towers. Thousands of towers are deployed every month to get coverage for the 1 billion people inside the country. We used to earlier do it using people surveys, people on the ground doing estimations, figuring out where there's density, then you put the tower. It took us weeks to roll out towers in that format. And that meant just longer time for customers to wait before they get their service. Today, the methodology of setting up towers is entirely powered by data analytics, AI, and ML. And I use each word with a lot of respect because I don't think everything needs a machine learning algorithm. But we start with simple data, you perfect the process, then you build the model, then you scale it. How do we do that for networks? We use maps of India, use computer vision technologies from the top, identify various objects on the map. Things like what is a farmland and what is not, what the forest was a farmland. Identify buildings. All these are mapped using visual computing. Using this data, we then kind of zone in on where we think the ideal tower should be in terms of density mapping, in terms of coverage. And we use this as a signal that initially goes to a human team so that they can actually verify and deploy. And as we perfect the model per region, we then start using a completely automated AI model to go deploy the towers. And this drove tremendous efficiencies in the budgets that the network team uses today to deploy. And we are talking about 20,000 crore size budgets to actually go deploy networks. So this is one area where we've invested. Now let me give you a couple of other examples that the diversity is clear. Take customer experience, for example. When I first took over the customer experience function at Airtel, we have about 18,000 agents serving our customers. And in order to service these agents, we used to have hundreds of people listening to calls with the spirit of improving agent quality. So today, if you look at Airtel, probably that number of agents is halved. And that is a technology feat in itself through automation. But the story I want to tell is about the hundreds of people who used to listen to calls. It was never enough. We used to sample calls. We used to get a sense of the problems. We used to give feedback manually to the managers of these agents to improve the agent quality. Today, the entire process is automated. There is a speech recognition engine that actually analyzes every call, understands sentiment patterns. For example, is the agent getting angry? Or is the agent pausing too long? All this information on a per agent level is now sent back to the managers, which means the quality of identifying the problem and the quality of training both have improved, allowing now our agents to serve more customers more efficiently and better. That's the second example. The third is a fun one. Take Wink, our music app, for example. Today, if you're a user of Wink, you see email-based pieces inside the Wink app. And there's a fun story behind it. We initially tried to use structured data to go understand mood patterns and such, and we quickly realized a lot of the data that comes from our partners is just not organized well enough and sometimes incorrect. So we took a different approach. We started analyzing the spectrogram or the waveform of the music. And using the waveform, we now have a catalog of all music based on waveforms and spectrograms. Using that, we analyze how similar moods could look like. And then we bring that music together into a mix and we present that to consumers. So all these are different ways by which at Airtel we are using data to actually make the customer experience better, to make ourselves more efficient in serving our customers. Hopefully that gives you a sense of what we do.
Yeah, Adarsh, thanks. I mean, it's. I was just thinking, winking with music, the kind of a good example. So I think all of us should try it at some point in time. It would sort of, lighten the mood on a heavy subject like this. Deepak, you also have a lot of these fun examples. I mean, right from speaking about, I think there's some disturbance. I think so. Not too sure what it is all about. There's some disturbance in the back end. I'm not too sure what it is. So, yeah, I think it's. Yeah. So, Deepak, coming back to you, Kotak Bank has, if I remember earlier conversations, you used to talk about AI-driven chatbots. I know that you have got a chatbot called Kia. You have AI engines called Trinity. You have been doing a lot of work with blockchain, etc. You also have deployed a do-it-yourself digital repayment platform and many other such initiatives as far as the use of data analytics and AI and automation is concerned. So let's hear a little about from you, a couple of minutes with a couple of examples.
Yeah, I think, Leslie, that was quite a few years back when we started that. But like any journey, a lot of those early initiatives have matured now and matured to scale more so during COVID times when traditional service channels like contact center could not really be up to that efficiency in the first wave of pandemic. And I think that's where we realized that learning from the human interactions over a period of time, how do we convert that into digital experience? So while in the phase one, the conversational bots and the channels were operating independent of the assisted channels, but I think we learned over a period of time a lot of complex conversation and nuances is not something that these channels were attuned to. So while it started with FAQs, more of straight through processing, but customers needed answer to far more complex queries. And that's where we started as the pandemic had set in last March, April. From almost 80,000 skills that our conversational AI engine had, within a month, we almost scaled it up to 200,000. And that happened largely because a lot of our employees, those who couldn't turn up to office, we asked them to start training what they know. And that's how we could crowdsource internally a lot of conversational insights from human into machine. And that helped us manage that wave. And then obviously we continue to integrate that into assisted channels. So you know that for a customer, it's a seamless experience, even though you are not able to solve it. And today, as we speak, I think we serve at about 95% accuracy. So, which I believe is among the best in class, what we benchmark within financial service space. But I think that the use cases have moved beyond, and that's where I see a lot now. What we are doing is largely on credit and underwriting, because that is, especially as we have moved to now flow-based lending and a small ticket loans. You just cannot keep the manual underwriting process and the way traditionally we used to do the credit. And there is enough and more now of data of kind of declines, delinquencies, the patterns, how we have seen moratorium impacting the repayment capacity of different customers, because we had a loan moratorium in between during pandemic. So even mining some of the industrial data to say which sector is a good moratorium versus where a moratorium can lead to just deferring the delinquencies at a later date. So a decision not just for the first time credit underwriting, but even for loan monitoring or renewal collections. I think we took the whole asset side onto this ML models. Where depending on customer, industry, profile, geography, impact of lockdown and pandemic on the kind of businesses, we could do a more granular prediction model to say that what does it look like. And I think that became a big ROI for us. We also started to use a lot of now ML algos into the fraud and the digital transaction monitoring. Because the other big shift happened in the last 12 to 18 months was a lot of first-time users started to use mobile. They started to pay digitally, but they were not really aware of, how to take care of their PIN, security if they are accessing this bank account from somewhere else, and thereby the kind of issues that you typically see in terms of the fraud and the risk that is there in terms of the real-time monitoring of authentication or a decline of a transaction, or asking customer to go through a step-up mode. A lot of those, as we mine data, we could take this onto a real-time transaction and authentication management. And the last of that, what was where we started to apply that again at scale now, is a lot of physical processes, paper and journeys, which pre-COVID was okay because a lot of stuff used to be hybrid. Some part of it was paper and there was some part of the journeys were in the branches. We realized that that's not good enough anymore because it has to be end-to-end. Things have to move digitally, but you still had paper at source. It can be a PDF file through a bank statement or a loan statement or probably a letter of a bank guarantee. So we started to put a lot of those through the cognitive OCR, where handwriting recognition, pattern recognition, reading of the check and the physical instruments, we could convert it into the algos at the back end so that it became a lot more easier for us to process paper at the front, but everything else could be done digitally. And that helped us beat on the legal side, risk side, or operations to automate a lot of these processes which are now real time.
Yeah, I think you brought up some very valid points on the automation of process, how the progression of the technologies have concerned, even when we were speaking about AI, say a few years back, and now what has happened. But I also understand that Kia as a voice bot itself has progressed so much. I think it even understands context and slangs much better than it did some time back, because we had a lot of problems around that initially, like the T-bot, etc. So the racial slurs and all that.
So we started from English to English, and now we have gone to regional languages. And I think the real fun in India, which you don't get a template from other countries, is about the multilingual, expression, gesture, context. Not an easy problem to solve, but I think a very interesting area to get it.
We'll come to that in a bit. So Suresh, this is the BFSI sector. Your own designation, I love it, Head of Innovation and Future of Technologies. Actually, it says it all from a point of view of AI, ML and all that kind of stuff. And you're in the BFSI sector. Deepak spoke about the banking part of it. You can tell us a little about Mahindra Finance and the kind of innovation that you're doing in this area.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for this opportunity with you all today. It's a great insight, and the topic is relevant. And the expectation set is what it's very clear to find out the kind of e-commerce, especially when it comes in India. E-business is less to do with electronics, more to do with emotions. So when you state this in technology, if you state that as part of the technology, it's a feature. If an end user finds out, it's a bug. So that's the way it's framed, and that's the way it started. And trying to utilize as much as part of the artificial intelligence to try to build. When you try to replace something in rural India, you have to address something else very specific in terms of adhering to the connectivity, electricity, and the resource availability in the last mile, where similar, like to keep the technology simple and trying to access as much as traditional and trying to utilize the emerging data. If you try to strengthen and try to utilize the tools, for us in rural, what happens, you try to get as much as more on the cooked data rather than the real information which try to create, as much as scrub the data to build quality in terms of trying to create existing policy, process, procedures, and ensure the regulators to shape the data using the flexible manipulation techniques. That's where the reality comes part of the artificial intelligence when you try to do it, and why it is required. That's what the real, the digital transformation is. You can see a very big shift from corporate digital towards the customer digital, where every individual customer is treated as corporate, and the technology and other solution services revolves to ensure the services which is more focusing on the customer. So when you try to defend as much as to go close to the customer, you have to use something of a trusted data and a proven analytics. That's where the model of generating and consuming that information has changed from just evolving to create a model of just giving a fee-based income or a information which is required for to get a loan. Now it is creating something called to get an engagement with the customer. That's nothing but it's more to do with an earn to pay model. Make them to earn so that they can pay for us. That's the way it is, very simple. But that's the purpose of information. That's the purpose of artificial intelligence which tries to create. And as Deepak has already pointed out, to say like it's specific to rural, you have to be more specific in terms of how the demography works and how the disparity and the developments which happens part of the specific in terms of the emerging needs and the current need. So when you're trying to use as much as part of the emergency needs, you try to create that kind of situations which is part of the available energy resource, which empowers the digitalization to use the kind of information which creates an earn to pay model, which we call it as a community cloud. When we try to use it, the real artificial intelligence which success from the financial is to create and avoid the financial pressures, try to create as much as to ensure the competitive pressures and ensure the environmental pressures, which gives as much as internal and external pressures got handled using the information to deliver new products, new services at the lower cost and a higher quality. So when you're trying to defend that artificial intelligence creating similar things, as corporate, we try to create as much as technological advancements part of the service domain, which connects with the kind of change of regulators and legislation part of the technology domain, where the real innovation helps us to go closer towards the financial domain, helps us the dynamics in the market, and creates an organizational domain which ensures the customer value. So if you want to have an enabling and smart enterprise, if you are trying to get something else closer to them, let us have something to go close to the customer, get engaged with them, which creates part of the digital. Back to you, Mr. Leslie.
Nitin, let's get on to you. you have been patiently listening to the users, and typically I start with the users. Now, when we talk about automation, I know UiPath is typically connected with a lot of RPA part of it, but I know that you do a lot as far as you cannot sort of talk of about automation without talking about AI. So you have been listening patiently to all the users out here and also bearing with the kind of technical flaw that I'm facing. So my apologies once again to all the participants. So please tell us, when you meet your clients, a lot of talk around AI and ML today is actually many companies are using just mere statistics and talking it and sort of portraying it as AI. The users out here, I see like Amod's company, I would dare say, is an AI native to a very great extent. All the other companies in the BFSI sector, whether it's Kotak Bank, whether it's Mahindra Finance, and whether it is Airtel, all are like very, big adopters of AI and ML. So how do you see this entire space?
Right. So thank you, Leslie. And I'm really glad to kind of hear each of these stories. I think most of the people sitting over here are leading the AI initiatives across the region. I mean, I would like to take a step back, right? I think just to start with from where we have evolved, right, when it comes to automation. So if you ask the same questions 3, 4, 5 years back, I think we were talking more about automating back office processes or rule-based processes. I think since then, I think we have evolved quite a lot. Now we see that we already heard Mr. Adarsh spoke about contact center automation. Mr. Deepak spoke about automation across the different lending channels. I think we have evolved from pure play back office rule-based automation to a lot of cognitive automations, and we have actually increase the overall scope or coverage of automation, right, to front office, middle office. Now, there are two key reasons why this has happened, right? So one is, I think we have realized the importance of data, and I think organizations like Kotak and Airtel and I think Udaan, they are using data really well today, right? So that's one. Second, I think one of the biggest reasons is convergence of different technologies today, right? So today, if I'm talking about automation, I think it obviously includes a lot of machine learning models, but also it includes a combination of RPA with machine learning, a lot of intelligent document processing, API-based automations, right? So I think all these pieces of technologies have actually matured quite a lot in last few years, and which is where we have started to see a larger impact, right? So today, I'll give you a few examples from the areas which I hear from my customers, and I think some of those were already mentioned. I think customer experience has been one of the biggest areas, and I think the only addition I want to do is today now when I talk to customers, when we look at customer experience, it is across channels. I think Mr. Adarsh gave a very good example of how you want to measure customer experiences, your employee experience across the contact center. We have done a lot of contact center automations where we are trying to say, hey, look, how can I improve overall customer experience by reducing the overall time it takes to address a customer request. Similarly, I think especially in this COVID time, we saw that the virtual channels actually started being used a lot, like emails. So today, the amount of emails which organizations are receiving has increased multifold. So today we are talking about smart email automation. So I think it's more about omni-channel presence or how you are able to manage all of the different channels better if you have to provide a better customer experience, right, whether it is branches or contact centers or emails or any other virtual channel. So I think that has been one of the biggest areas. Second area, and I think Mr. Deepak mentioned this a little bit, is especially lending and mortgage as an area. Now obviously there are things like how can I reduce the overall time to close a lending journey, right? But essentially, and again due to COVID, we found a lot of use of prediction capabilities, right? How can you predict, how can you apply your ML models to your data and predict better those customers who are going to default, right? So how do you handle all those kind of scenarios upfront so that you are able to mitigate your losses upfront, right? So that's second. And the third thing, and I think this was also touched a little bit about how do you handle structured and unstructured data? So today, as we speak, I think organizations, banking and telcos are still, document heavy organizations, right? And we do receive a lot of structured application document, but then we do also receive a lot of unstructured data sources, right? Like different types of KYC documents or different types of trade documents. So then how do I handle all of that data together? And then more importantly, how do I handle that data across my journey? So then how do I bring all these technologies together, intelligent document processing, RPA, and some of the machine learning capabilities?
Nitin, you have already jumped into my second part of the conversation. So just hold a bit, because we're going to talk about the challenges in a bit. But before that, I'd like to come to Jayant. Jayant, I know I generally keep you for the last because, it's fair. All the users have to speak for the vendors, yes. And I always tell you that the analysts can listen to everybody and then give, talk about.
After all these years, I've gotten used to it, Leslie. I'll be surprised if you're not keeping me last. Yeah.
Yeah, and I wish Adarsh had something for me where I could predict a network outage at my end. So I wish that AI ML part would have come here also. Yes, please, Jayant.
Sorry, you have a specific question for me?
Yeah, the specific question is you have heard all the users. Now, it's certainly, as I said, some clearly fall in the AI native kind of basket. Certain guys are AI adopters, and clearly there are the AI laggards. So when you're seeing the kind of use cases, do you have kind of some data points that we could, understand the space on how this how AI automation and data analytics is being used? Let's not step into the challenges part of it.
Yeah. So when you're talking about AI natives and AI migrants, in terms of, we are essentially talking about AI maturity and adoption when it comes to companies and organizations, right? So, globally, basis AI maturity, companies can be, segregated or segmented into 4 different types, right? Beginners, implementers, advancers, and leaders. Okay, and the global, bifurcation is that about 20% of the companies are still in the beginning stage, 32% of the companies are implementers, 33% of them are advancers, and 15% of companies are leaders. And everything right from investments to the data, the quality of data being used, the AI use cases, applications, and ROI, differs for each of these segments of companies. Now, we've heard everyone on the panel, talk about use cases, and they're very good from different sectors, right? Be it a B2B marketplace like Udaan, or a telco, big telco like Airtel, or a bank like what Deepak talked about. It's very interesting to look at all the use cases and applications, and I won't go into any of them specifically, but what I would like to emphasize is that, except for Deepak and to some extent Nitin, not a lot of people are addressing the big elephant in the room when it comes to even the use cases and applications of AI, which is COVID and pandemic. Okay, in my mind, when I look at what 2020 and 2021 has done, it has actually changed the urgencies and the problem statements, for AI, automation, and data analytics, right? To give you some examples between across sectors, in healthcare, between April to October 2020, the Fortis, chain of hospitals, which has 19 hospitals across India, had a backlog of 60,000 surgeries. People could not take in surgeries, and as soon as they started in October, November, their HMIS software was not good enough to prioritize. It's a good data analytics problem to be solved. And everything else, look at how our lives have changed. Online schooling, Zoom calls, remote working, this...
let's focus a little on the enterprise. Let's focus a little on the enterprises part of it. Fair
enough. All I'm saying is, even on the enterprise part, the 2 big things that are coming up where AI and data analytics can solve, are in the areas of engagement and trust. Okay, can AI and data be used to build trust? When it comes to data and trust, we always talk about antitrust laws or data privacy, data security. But can data be used to build trust? These are the two big things that I, as an analyst and an industry observer, observed, coming up in the last couple of years.
Fair enough. So I think now we are more or less cornered basically on the customer experience part of it, and enhancing customer experience, enhancing personalization, and then building trust. Let's talk a little a bit on the challenges. I think Nitin already touched on it. So let's jump straight. Amod, you have been listening very patiently to all the speakers. Let's come back to you. What are the kind of challenges that you face? Because you have been mostly restricted to the e-commerce sector, but you surely understand the challenges everywhere. I guess it's more or less similar.
Yeah, I think from our perspective, Leslie, the challenges have been slightly more contained because we were coming off, from the benefit of having done some of these things at Flipkart. But I can share, based on my visibility into the industry, I think quality of data is one of the biggest sources. Is one of the biggest challenges, which is one reason why I usually encourage companies to think about data governance as a very first-class concept. This is for all data that the company generates internally. Thinking about it has been a game changer for us. At Udaan, we end up taking data governance very, very seriously. And what that essentially translates into is that instead of having data as an artifact or a side effect of the business processes that gets looked way too late in the pipeline, right from the get-go, every product area that we end up investing in, the relevant people, first-class concept, even before that product has gone live. So that is what I mean by data governance. That makes sure that just like you've got your DevOps or production ops. Just like that, you've got data ops, ML ops, these sort of, notion defined inside the organization that greatly simplifies things. Obviously, there would be organizations where either this does not exist or there are data sources. I remember, I think it was Adarsh who was calling out that, the third-party data that actually comes into you. We've got some of those as well, where you need to make sure that you are really sort of able to parse and understand that data, the semantics behind that data a lot more cleanly. It could be from social media. It could be from documents that are submitting. Just like in telco, B2B, requires us to make sure that we are validating people are uploading business-related documents, identification. We also use that for some fraud detection and abuse detection and stuff like that. And that's one of the biggest areas of very practical AI application that is relevant for almost every company out there, is what I feel. It's not going to be cost efficient or even viable for most companies to be doing all of that manually, because the volume of data is exploding exponentially. So the best way to deal with that is to have database algorithms, sort of improving the data for you. Obviously, there's some circular logic in there which needs to be protected and cautioned against, but that's the way that we end up doing it.
Thanks, Amod. I think we're running out of time more because from the network point of view. But very quickly, Adarsh, I think as far as structured data is there, I think most of it is clean data, but unstructured data would probably be a big problem out here.
No, actually, I want to oppose that statement. I don't think structured data always is clean. Going back to the question of governance, I'll give you a classic example, right? There's something that was a fun discovery for me. So when I first came into Airtel, and for customer experience, we need to know who you are when you call. So there's a simple construct of, gender, male and female. And you would imagine for somebody like a telco, this should not be a hard problem. I mean, we've got all our customers, so we know who's male, who's female. But the problem is in that structured data, right? When somebody buys a SIM, the pattern in India is the male buys for the family. So now somebody's come, including me. I go and buy 4 SIMs. 1 goes to my wife, 2 goes to my children. Now, unfortunately, the structured data inside Airtel says, I've got 4 males in the system. Now, imagine like if we use that data to actually, push a product to that particular entity, I would be selling shaving cream to my wife. Because I would think that's a male right there, right? So that is the problem with structured data. structured data without observing the source, understanding the quality, still is a really messy problem. So we got to go fix that. Of course, parking that aside, then comes to unstructured data, a lot of different techniques to go understand how to capture unstructured data. Going back to our documents. Now we've got OCR, which actually kind of captures text from various documents that we get. We try to restrict it to certain fields. We haven't done a lot of work in the algorithms that goes into the fully unstructured land, but we still try to stick with certain fields. We try to capture that unstructured data. We try to interpret it. So there in the document area, we've got some work on unstructured. But for the telco, there's a lot of opportunity in the structured side. So I'm fortunate or unfortunately, we're working deeply on the structured side to really make sense of it all. I think we will get to unstructured probably in a couple of years. There's a lot of opportunity just in the structured side.
Great. Deepak, a few words quickly on what kind of caveats would, since you are in the BFSI sector, it's already a mature kind of area where the use of AI and ML and automation is pretty mature out there. But a couple of advice to younger companies that are just getting their feet wet in this area.
No, I think while everybody is getting data obsessed, it's important to see what is relevant and how it can be put to use. Because not all data, just because it's there, really makes sense to go after. Also, you see a lot of companies, they first start building the whole data capture infrastructure, like data warehouse, data lake, or now data lake house, without really thinking of the end outcome of what are you going to achieve from there. And I think the third I would say is, while there is a lot of proprietary data, every institution like even we capture, but a lot of data sits outside our network. And that's where a lot of this unstructured data we talk about, like location data or your preference or some of the audio stuff. Do you really have consent to even capture those data or use that data? So I think right now probably that is not being seen as seriously, but over a period of time that will become core of the whole consent artifacts and how are you going to use it. So I think these are the 2 or 3 things I would watch out for.
Suresh, your couple of thoughts?
Yeah, it's again, this area is what real innovation happens, the demand part of the system which tries to connect and try to take it out. For example, good olden days, we used to identify good customer or a bad customer using a check return. Go through his bank statement, find a check return case, then we say he's a bad customer, good customer. Now that things have changed. We have to get into the social to find out whether somebody has commented about the company, somebody individual has done so many things, part of Facebook or LinkedIn or part of Twitter. That are the impacts which is coming added towards that kind of authenticity of that information. And again, the kind of community cloud, that's what we are emphasizing more, where that share and care is keeping more added towards the customer. That's what the real threat and real expectation set part of the unstructured data. How we are going to utilize part of that particular purpose. Again, how it gains the purpose of that particular information, which caters a lot to the customer and to the company. So it's more focusing towards a kind of acceptance of information which is coming very highly part of the customer, and the kind of digital transformation relying on that information creates more authenticity. That's what the real challenge, and that's where rural India, we are expecting more like e-business, less to do with electronics, more to do with emotions. How to set that kind of omni channels which captures the information with authenticity. Back to you, Mr. Liz.
Great. Thanks, Suresh. Nitin, you have already spoken about the challenges in a quick minute or so. Can you just your final advice to companies as such when they're looking at AI and
Right. So I think very briefly, I think as a platform provider, there are 3 most important things for me. So one is how easy I can make it for my customer to handle data. It can come from any structured or unstructured source. So today we can work with structured documents. Today we can work with legal agreement contracts, and today we can work with feedback from App Store or social media channels. So one is handling data. Second is I think managing or controlling that data, right? So we have to put, I think Mr. Amod mentioned earlier, data governance. How do we make sure that your control over data is intact, and you are able to manage all that control across the data sitting across different data sources in an organization. And third, I think, is traceability. I think that's the very, very important point, especially for regulated organization. How do you make sure that you are able to trace and map back your data to the right sources and produce it in front of your regulator so that you are not fined, right? So I think these are the three most important things to keep in mind when working with data.
Jayant, final words.
Yeah, everybody's talking about the data and the quality of data, and it comes up to creating good AI models and accurate ones. But at a business and a company level, one of the big issues and the challenges that the companies still face is still the ROI measurement. Okay, companies still need to get that very clear, and the use case and application and the ROI, the right use case and the ROI measurement in place for AI adoption and automation and implementation. Okay, and then the second is that of skilled professionals. Okay, getting the right skilled professionals and training the existing workforce and the internal stakeholders on AI and data thinking, right? Because AI and data have the ability of not just changing the products and the solutions of the company, but the entire business models and and the stakeholder ecosystem as well, the value chains both internally and externally itself. So that requires a huge change management and training and upskilling for existing employees, and getting the right set of employees from the outside, and of course the quality of data itself when it comes to algos.
So friends, I think over the last 40-45 minutes we have been listening, and I think the take homes are very clear that it's not only about data. Of course, data is being used, data analytics is being used both from structured, unstructured data, but it's the quality of data that actually matters and how you put it to business use. And of course, as others also have pointed out, it's data governance, it's traceability, and many other such factors, which of course other speakers also will be speaking about it. And I wish with all this AI ML, as I said earlier, also people like Adarsh and all would also treat us also where I could predict bandwidth failures during these kind of events till we get back to the physical events. So once again, all of you, thank you so much for your time, and a real pleasure having you on this event, and hope to see you all soon again. Thank you very much.